The Gary Halbert Suck. Michael McLean, nobullbook.com, badassletter.com on the dock on a fabulous August morning. Badassmillionaire.com, the toughest advice for the toughest businessmen. No fluff, no theory, no bull. I was thinking about this story the other day about the great copywriting legend, the late, great Gary Halbert, who was a character like no other. Halbert was one of the greatest copywriters of our time. And Gary had a saying. He had many principles, but my favorite principle that Gary taught was called the suck note-taking principle. It was a system he used, and I mean the guy was he was a copywriting genius. He was a creative genius. Ads, direct response ads, all this kind of stuff. Just one of the best copywriters in history, but a different cat too, a completely different cat. And I read a newsletter of his the other day on the suck, which was a note-taking formula that he used. And it's so similar to everything that I use in my own business world. So as you may or may not know, for the last 20 plus years, I've always had the discipline of reading for at least 60 minutes a day. I literally set a timer, an egg timer, and I sit myself down with a big cup of coffee. It could be on the end of the dock. It could be on the boat. It could be in a couple of the chairs I have around the property, depending on the weather. Sometimes I read in my vehicle. Sometimes I read in town at the mastermind house that I work in. It doesn't really matter. It's just a place that's completely uninterrupted. And what Gary talked about in the suck is not reading. He said he refused to call it reading. He called it studying. And that's how I feel about my daily time, that hour where I'm reading magazines or reading newsletters, mostly great books, is that it's not reading, it's studying, and there's a big difference. 99% of people, if they do read anything at all, most people read less than one chapter of a book per year. Think about that. That explains a lot, because leaders are readers, and the average Joe average reads less than one chapter in one book per year. And I find that even hard to believe. I don't believe that they read any book. I don't believe they read any chapter whatsoever. I don't believe that they look up from their dumb phone. I just don't believe it. I don't see anybody reading books. I walk into the coffee house 365 days a year to get my cup of coffee. I don't see one person sitting there reading. I don't see older people reading. I don't see younger people reading. I don't see anybody reading but myself. So I'd like to find that person who's, they say, the 1%er. So Gary talked about how it's so critical that when we're reading every day great books, that we have this formula of study called the suck. And what it means is you're just not sitting there reading the book. You're not just sitting there reading the newsletter. You have your Sharpies, you have your highlighters, you have your notepad, you have your journal. In my case, I have those white index cards. I call them recipe cards because my grandmother used to write all her recipes on those cards. So I have thousands and thousands of those white recipe cards. And on each card is one, repeat, one distinction, one idea that I've come up with, and then the next card I put another idea, next card. So I literally have thousands and thousands and thousands of these white 3 by, 5-inch index cards, recipe cards, with all these single distinctions on them. So when I read a book, when I sit down and read a book, people think, oh, Michael reads, 3 to 4 or 5 hours a day, which I sometimes do. But it's interesting, sometimes when I sit down for an hour of reading, I only read 10 pages. I'm a methodical reader. I'm not a fast reader by any means. You're a much faster reader than I am, but I'm extremely methodical. Sometimes I'll read 5 pages. Sometimes I'll read 10 pages, which is usually a chapter. But if I'm reading a phenomenal book, if I'm reading an outstanding book, I'll take a month to read it because I do not want to fire through these books. It's not a race. It's not a race. It's a marathon, not a sprint. So if I'm reading an amazing book like Relentless as an example, every January I sit down, I read Relentless again, Tim Grover's book. And I literally read a chapter a day, which takes me 16 days or 16 chapters, 10, 12 pages a day. And I stretch that baby out so that I have that influence for almost the entire month of January, if not, 2/3 of the month. I'm not in a race. I don't want that book to be over with. So I just read a chapter a day. I'm obsessed with the chapter. I'm focused on just that one idea that Grover is teaching, and it takes me 16 days to read Relentless again. And I do that the same with any of these top books that I do, like the 64 Rules of Power, the book Power, 64 Rules, something like that. And honestly, I read that book I have it going for like 2 months, and I have it sitting on my desk, and I'll read one law of power per day, because that's another book that I've read 20 different times over 20 years. I have 10 books. I have 10 books that I read every year. So that means those books have been read anywhere from 10 to 20 times. And that goes back to the Halbert principle of it's better, and this is really critical. It's better to read 10 books 10 times. It's better to read 10 outstanding books, the best of the best book on marketing, the best book on business, the best book on health and nutrition, the best book on time management, the best book on marriage and relationships. Those top 10 books, the best 10 books that you know and can find and have read, it's more valuable for you to reread those books 10 different times. So every year, 10 times, 10 years, just every year, like every year I reread Relentless. Every year I reread Winning. Every year I reread Dan Kennedy's tiny, no BS business book. Every year I reread Dan Kennedy's no BS time management book. Every single year I reread Dan Kennedy's no BS sales book. And some other books, and there's like those, and I've been doing it for 20 years, so I'm up to 20xing those books. But not a year goes by where I don't reread those 10 or 15 books that are at the top. And there was a great quote one time, and it said the problem with new books is they stop us from rereading old books. I thought that was such a great quote. The problem with new books is they stop us from rereading great old books. And that's my mindset. There's so much garbage out there, and you see guys on Shark Tank or any of these celebrities, and they just every year another ghost-written book. I mean, O'Leary didn't write that 5th book. I read one of Cuban's books, just garbage. His 7th book, just garbage. Like his first book was a fantastic book. It was the same as Trump's books, like The Art of the Deal. That's a legendary book. The rest of his books, ghost written, he never touched them. Garbage. Soon as he got into the apprentice years, every book another one. Same with O'Leary, Kevin O'Leary, Mr. Wonderful. His first book, The Cold Hard Truth, was just it's a must. I've read that book 7 different times. Then he got into all these other books that were clearly written by ghostwriters to cash in on the celebrity, which I have no problem with, but I'm not going to read them because they're garbage. They're garbage. It was just fluff. It was theory. It was BS. So that's why it's so important to read and reread great books. But I just mentioning when we're talking about Halbert's suck, is he also mentioned, he said, listen, and I agree with this 100%. He was a man before his time. He said, by physically writing every day in the journal or on these cards that I use, by physically writing the ideas that you're discovering in the book you're reading, you're improving your retention by a minimum 70 points, 70%. I couldn't imagine. I've never sat down with a book. I can't remember when I've ever sat down with a book that I didn't have highlighters, green pens, black Sharpies, and those cards and my journal, because it's just one idea after another. It's like, write it down, write it down, write it down. And I couldn't imagine any other formula because I wouldn't remember anything. Instead, I have like these thousands of cards of ideas because every time I reread a book or read a new book, I'm taking notes throughout the book. But just physically taking that green Sharpie, and that's what I do for abundance. I use green Sharpie for abundance. So I use green Sharpie. I write on the recipe card the quote, or I write the idea on there, and then it helps stick in my mind. Like, it increases my retention by 70%. That's good enough for me. I'm happy with that. So Halbert's Suck was about note taking, like write it down, write it down, write it down. And when you're done a book, you should have 50, 75, 100 ideas. And that was his concept, sucking the information out of the book, not just mindlessly reading. Oh, I read another book, Michael, or I read 2 books a week or 4 books a week or something like that. That's not, like, on average, I average 52 books a year, but that's not fast or impressive by any means. I mean, it's like a chapter a day, or sometimes I'll sit down and I'll read 3 chapters, but at 3 different sittings. And I'm reading 3 to 4 to 5 hours a year. So that's not a lot of books. Like, I'm methodical. I'm methodical. 10 pages a day, 10 pages a day, 10, or at least at a sitting. And if I want to do more than that, then I'll sit down 10 pages, then sit down not 10 pages, then sit down 10 pages. And that way I'm on that pace for that book a week. But just, the Halbert Suck, where he had all these cards, all these journals full of ideas, and he would take notes when he would reread the book every year. So that's a huge, huge thing that I've used for, oh my God, decades, where first of all, always order physical paper and ink books. None of this screen. You don't need any more time on a screen. You don't need to be sitting on the beach or in your vehicle on an iPad. You need to be building a library that you can pass down to your children. Don't leave your children money. Don't leave your children money. Just make sure you leave them a library. Leave them your life's work. Leave them your ideas, your distinctions, your aha moments. Leave them your books, your business books, your marketing books, your fitness books, your nutrition books, That's what you leave your children, not crippling money. They can make their own money. So when we buy physical books, we build a library. Like in our next home, I'm going to have a massive, massive library because I have a problem. I mean, I'm addicted to reading. I've got a serious addiction to buying books. I'm like a kid on Christmas. Every time I get a book delivered, I'm like, I open it up, I stare at it. I can't wait to crack it open. I love the look of books. I love the feel of books. I love the smell of books. I can't wait to get and do the Halbert Suck on those books. Like, just take all the information I can out of that book and then reread it, pull it off the shelf every 12 months. So just some interesting things there is make sure when you're reading, order and read physical books. And secondly, that's the reason I don't own my book is you can't get it as an ebook. You can't get it, as a go fetch PDF. None of that stuff. I sell physical, hard copy, door stopper books, and audiobooks as a second option, and that's it. I don't do the Go Chase or any of that stuff or the cheap ebooks. I just sell real physical books because I want you to build a library. Secondly, note taking. Like, get those white index cards. You can buy them at Staples, Business Depot, wherever, and just keep them by your chair. Like, look at the chairs at the end of the dock here. I was reading out there yesterday for 2 hours. So on that boat, in the cup holders, there's 5 highlighters, there's Sharpies, there's environment. You want to change your life, change your environment. Well, my environment here is all about chairs and things to read in. So if you can see here, like, here's a chair I read in when it's too hot and sunny. So I have these great chairs. So I'll sit at the end of the dock a certain time of day, and then I'll sit on the boat a certain time of day, and I have chairs on the other side of the house when it's too windy out or whatever. But sometimes I'll read inside. But you should see the cup holders in my Escalade are full of highlighters and markers. The cup holders on the boat are full of markers. Like, I'm talking 15 highlighters, green Sharpies, black Sharpies. My chair on the other side of the lake house is got all these Sharpies. And then I always have those cards in my book. So I grab my book and I put in about 10, 15 of those white recipe cards and I head out wherever I'm going. So I have this stuff where I trip over it, where I stumble over it. I got chairs all over the property. I got highlighters wherever I'm reading. I got cards. I've got pens. I mean, this is what it's all about. I'm never stumbling around looking for something. I've controlled my environment. So that's the Gary Halbert suck. And he's certainly a great legend worth learning from. And like I said, buy physical books. Pens, use the green pens for abundance, those big the Sharpies on the white cards, and just highlight those books up. And then when you reread the book every year, highlight it again, take notes again. The diamonds are in there, the pearls, the jewels, they're in there if you look for them. And take your time reading. It's not a race. 10 pages, 10 pages, 10 pages, 10 pages. If you're just starting out trying to create a different behavior, start ordering a book every 2 weeks and 10 pages a day. Make that your rule. Okay, I'm gonna read for 30 minutes. I'm gonna start slow. So 30 minutes a day, first thing in the morning, and 10 pages done, 10 pages done, 10 pages done, and build up to 7 days, and then 14 days, and then 21 days, and then 30 days, and then 45 days. Just 10 pages, 10 pages. Every day you put 10 pages of great ideas and inspiration and motivation into your mind. 10 every day you're building your muscle, your brain with 10 pages, 10 pages, 10 pages. And then when you are reading those 10 pages, make sure that you're stopping, you're highlighting everything that's important. You have no connection to phone. There's no technology around you. It's a physical book, and you're highlighting, and then you're taking notes, and you're writing in the green Sharpie on those cards. And then keep those green cards in a safe place, because someday you can give those to your son or daughter or grandkids and say, here you go. You want to go into business? Here you go. You want to learn about marketing? Here you go. You want to get in better physical or mental shape? Here you go. You want great quotes and inspiration and motivation? Here you go. Time management? Here you go. And that's what I'm building for my daughter here. I literally want to hand her a chest full of these cards that I've written throughout my adult life of distinctions, ahas, pearls, jewels. You tell me that's not more valuable for my daughter than leaving her money? I'm going to leave her the tools for my toolbox. I'm going to leave her my toolbox. And my toolbox will be full of great books and those recipe cards with all the great ideas sucked out of those great books. Man, oh man, that's legacy right there. So speaking of legacy, you still have an opportunity to apply for my 5-star mastermind coming up this September. Best of the best. It's probably not for you, but if it is for you, if you're a top 1%er, generous, driven, relentless, you can apply at badasschampion.com. It's for 15 elite men, 12 months. I'm in your ear. I'm in your life for 12 months. I'm going to 10x I'm going to give you the toolbox. I'm going to give you the toolbox to 10x your income, your marriage, your relationship with your children, your physical health, your mental health, your time management. If you don't 10x over the year that we spend together, I'm going to kick you out. I'm going to kick your ass out, and you're not going to be welcome back. So there's accountability, there's hard coaching, but there's also that personal demand of 10xing. Like, that's the rule I have with my mastermind, my 12-month mastermind. If you can't 10x the areas of your life that you want to 10x, then I'm not the right coach for you. So you get 1 year. So the pressure's on, the accountability's there, the hard coaching's there, the tools are there, and you're going to be joined at the hip with 15 guys that are, smarter, better, harder working, whatever you want to call it, and me. So, it's going to be impossible for you to misbehave, because there's nothing more powerful than association. You and me are the average of the 5 people we spend the most time with. Well, guess what? The biggest thing that's going to change your life in the next 12 months is if you up-level your social circle. If you're still hanging out with the same 5 people and doing the same things, how do you expect to 10x anything? How do you expect to improve your life? Now, all of a sudden, you're hanging out with 15 other men, myself included, then all of a sudden it's like, wow, look at my association. I'm now hanging out with millionaires and multimillionaires and husbands and world-class marketers and guys that are in the best physical shape of their lives at 55 and 60. So you're just automatically pulled magnetically into that association. And then you're friends for life as well. So if you're a sleeping giant, or you're a top 1%er who wants to be a top 0.001%er, you got the Michael Jordan mindset. You can't live with not being the best by a long shot. go to badasschampion.com now and apply, and you and I will get on the phone in the next couple weeks. So that's it for today. I want to share the story of the Gary Halbert suck. I love Halbert. He was a different cat, and I love different cats. I mean, at least he stood for something. At least he thought independently. At least he lived life and did business on his own terms, not like these 99%ers walking around a life of quiet desperation, listening to CNN or listening to the news or listening to their goofball friends on social media or buried in their phones. Those are the guys that I have no respect for. Those are the walking dead, zombies and drones. Guys like Halbert live their own life. You can criticize the whatever you... Are you kidding me? There's a guy that lived life and did business on his own terms. And most importantly, the thing I respect the most, he thought independently. He did his own thing. He didn't care about the critics. He didn't care about the people that were offended or the people that thought he was a different duck or anything like that. He made his own road, that guy. He made his own road. He accepted his losses, his victories, and he lived life and he thought in his own. So I love those guys. And you need to be doing the same thing, using your own mind to think. Does this make sense? What does my golden gut tell me? What does my intuition tell me? What is my creator trying to tell me? And listening to those incredible voices and start thinking for yourself. Do what 99% don't even think of doing now, and that is thinking. It's hard work. Sit in your chair, read 10 pages a day, take notes, fill out those index cards, recipe cards, so you can think for yourself. Start thinking for yourself. 2 words that changed my life, 2 words that'll definitely change yours, especially if you read 10 pages a day and start thinking for yourself. Be relentless.